Alrighty guys, here's a video on the zero product property. And what is the zero product property? It is the truth, that's what property means, the truth in math about multiplying two terms, product means multiply, when your answer is zero, okay? It's the truth in math about multiplying terms when your answer is zero. So whenever you have multiplication of two terms, I'm gonna just say A times B, whatever A is, whatever B is, if your answer is zero, the certain truth is that this first term, A, that could be zero, and or the second term, B, could also be zero. One of them, either the A or the B, have to be zero, or both of them could be zero. So this is what zero product property allows us to do, to take the multiplication of two terms, or three or four, or however many terms you're multiplying by. You take those terms that you're multiplying by and set them each equal to zero if your answer is zero. I mean, think about it. 3 times what will give you 0? The only number that could be here is 0. Or 5 times what will give you 0? Well, this has to be 0. So either one or the other or both could be 0. So the zero product property allows us to split a complicated looking equation into smaller, simpler equations, mainly one-step or two-step equations that we could solve, okay? So let's look into this. Sometimes it's ridiculously easy because it's already factored for you, all right? It's already in factored form. You don't have a standard form quadratic trinomial. Do not distribute and say x times x is x squared. That'd be ridiculous. Right here, you have to recognize what's happening. You have multiplication of one term times another term equaling 0. So we're able to use the zero product property, which means we're gonna split it. The x minus 3, that could be 0, and the x plus 4, that could also be 0. And when you solve these, of course, plus 3, you end up with the answer x equals positive 3, and over here you're gonna end up with x equals negative 4. And those are your two answers. Now, on the practice quiz, I would like you to type in these two answers with no spaces between your terms. How so? Type in x equals 3, comma, x equals negative 4. No spaces between the terms. Just type it in like that and you will get full credit. Now, I hope you read the instructions carefully. It tells you to type it in with no spaces between your terms. Now this one, again, was ridiculously easy because it was already set up in factored form. What do I mean by that? You already have something times something equals 0, right? All you do is split them and solve and get your two answers. Okay, there's another one that's even easier that you might get confused with. Kind of like this guy, right? People are like, well, what do I do? There's an x and there's an x minus 3. Well, you got to recognize the truth that you have something times something equaling 0. And the zero product property says that when you have something times something equals 0, you could split them and set them each equal to 0 and solve. So this first something, x, we're going to set that equal to 0. And the second something, x minus 3, we're going to set that equal to 0. And we're going to solve both of them. Well, the first one is already solved. That's an answer, x equals 0. The other one, if you add 3 to both sides, you'll get your answer, x equals 3. How are we going to type this in to get full credit on our practice quiz? You're going to type it in as x equals 0, comma, x equals 3, no spaces between your terms. That means no space between the x and the equal, or the equal and the 0, or the 0 and the comma, and that. You need to put the comma, all right? That's how it's said on the instructions, so please don't mess up on that. Type it in like this, and you'll get full credit. Now, of course, not all of them are going to be already factored for us. Let's take a look at the next one. You see, this one, it's not factored yet, so we need to factor it. So how do we factor it? Well, we recognize that the a value is 1, which means that we could probably factor using this format, thinking what times what is our c value that if I combine together gives us our b value. So I always say make a list of the negative 20, the multiples. How could we multiply two numbers together to get negative 20? Let's start with negative 1. Negative 1 times 20. How about negative 2? Negative 2 times 10. How about negative 3? Negative 3 times something give you negative 20? Nope. How about negative 4? Negative 4 times 5. And those are all the possible ways of multiplying numbers together to give you negative 20, besides changing the negative sign, right? Changing signs. but we'll do that if we have to. So the question is, which pair of numbers combines together to give us the middle value -1? Well, if I combine 20 and -1, that'll give me a 19. That's not a 19. I want a -1. I don't want a positive 19. So if I combine 10 minus 2, that's 8. That's not an 8. If I combine -4 and 5, that's 1. That is a 1, but it's negative. So I have the right number, I just have the wrong sign, which means that over here I have these numbers that are correct, but I have the wrong signs. So go ahead and change them. Make that a +4 and a -5, and you'll be good to go. That's a +4 that belongs right here, and a -5 that belongs right there. So what have we done here? We have factored. What is factoring? It's a reverse distributive property. It's where you have the multiplication answer, and you go backwards and come up with the multiplication problem. You now have something times something, and we have an equals 0, so please bring that down, equals 0. And now we could apply zero product property, right? Something times something equals 0. That's going to split x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0. Again, zero product property says when you have something times something equals 0, the first something could be set equal to 0, and the second something could be set equal to 0. And you solve both of those. I'm not even going to show my work here. I know you guys already know that the answer is x equals -4 and x equals +5. How do you type this in to get full credit in your practice quiz or quiz? You're going to type in x equals -4, comma, x equals +5, no spaces between your terms. Type it in like that. Now there's one more type of problem where you're going to have to apply zero product property, and that's when it's not set equal to 0. So you can't even start thinking of factoring until you set that equation equal to 0. So let's first move the 6 over to the other side, and you will have 0 equals, and what do we have left on the left side? We have an x squared minus 1x minus 6. You just rewrite it. And now you should recognize that this is a quadratic trinomial. The a value is 1, which means that maybe we could factor it with this format, thinking what times what is the c value that if I combine together is the b value. So I say make a list. What times what is -6? Over here, -1 times 6, -2 times 3, and that's it. Those are the only two possible combos of multiplying to get -6 besides changing signs. And we'll change signs if we have to. So let's just start combining. 6 and -1, that's 5. Is that middle term a 5? No, it's a -1. So this is not it. How about 3 minus 2? That's a 1. And that is a 1, but it's a -1, not a +1. So we have the right number, just the wrong sign. We have the right numbers, just the wrong signs. So let's change those signs. Change that to a +2 to a -3. And this will be the pair of numbers that goes in, +2, -3. And it's still equal to 0. Now you split them and solve. X plus 2 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. That's using zero product property. Your two answers will be x equals -2 and x equals +3. And of course, to get full credit, you need to type it in x equals -2, comma, no space, x equals +3, no space between anything. That's how you type it in, okay? I hope this helps.